welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And welcome to the Silmarillion podcast. Today's chapter, Thingol and Melian. I love this chapter. It's one of my favorites.
Nice, short, and sweet.
That's not why I love it. I love that it pushes forward because I've read the Beren and Luthien story, and so this is advancing the plot enormously. I love the metaphysical elements. I love the psychological elements. I love the imagery. I love the themes. It's just almost perfect. And the thing is, you have Melian is a Maiar who sang in the music of the Ainur. The thing is, she's one of the best singers, which means she's one of the most powerful out there of all the spirits of the Ainur. She is the one who taught nightingales to sing, was supposed to be helping out in the gardens of, according to one version of the Thingol and Melian chapter, she was playing truant. But she had a sudden, in some versions that Tolkien wrote, a sudden burst of vision that from Eru Ilúvatar that she had to be in Non-Elmoth and singing to the nightingales that night. Which really begs the question, did she know she was going to run into Thingol? Was it a calculative act on her part? The thing it brings into question is, did she love Thingol or not? It really brings to mind a bit of the eldritch horror that Girl Next Gondor discussed in one of her best videos. But then she moved on to the actual psychology of the relationship between Thingol and Melian, which was very fascinating. But the element of, can this Maiar actually love first sight? That begs the question, because her showing up because she was acting truant on the orders of Ilúvatar makes me wonder if she can feel love in the way we do. Did she just incarnate just to capture the attention of Thingol and to play the long game against Morgoth? Which would also bring into question her love for Luthien, and would suggest she doesn't love them. They're tools to an end. I'm just saying the eldritch horror side of it says no, that's one way to read it, but that's not how I like to read it. I do like how Girl Next Gondor read it to an extent that way at one point. I find it utterly fascinating, but I prefer the explanation that Melian was playing truant. She was just being a no child to an extent, but she did have an inkling. She knew not what was awaiting her in the forest, but she suspected it was important and that her destiny lay along that road. I think is rather fascinating. As for Elwë, he was in the forest because he wanted to go hang out with his buddy, grab a beer, maybe see a game or three, but then he had to go see about a girl, as Good Will Hunting's Sean DeGuire, played by Robin Williams, said in the movie, because this girl was a stunner.
Came across a literal goddess.
Yes. Melian, the way the text describes her, is the most beautiful, almost of all the Ainur. After, of course, some of the Valir, but I can't help but think maybe she might be more beautiful when she incarnates, because the other Valir do not incarnate. They don't like it because it means assuming a soft tissue form, whereas Melian did incarnate. And in the context of the universe, the other Valir are more beautiful. But in the context of human or elven flesh, Melian takes the prize because she's actually in a physical form we can actually see and discern and kind of judge. That said, what's particularly romantic is that Thingol sees her, is enchanted, and gives chase. Starts running away, probably laughing and just playing around a little. But then when she finally pulls him to a secluded clearing where the stars are all the clearer, she turns around, faces him, and in some versions he swoons, falls over. She stays by his side till he gets back up. Then they look into each other's eyes, and for centuries they're locked into place. They cannot move because they are so enchanted by each other that they fall in love and they cannot move. Tolkien ultimately was a massive romantic, and this was his idea of how the most romantic idea of lovers at first sight could possibly spend their time together. We might say today, shouldn't you ask for the guy or girl's name first? Isn't that the first step towards a relationship? Here, given all the names both of them have, names are immaterial. All that matters is what they are in that moment. All that they are, all that they can perceive themselves to be, is laid bare before the other. And this is the most romantic moment in the story. And I love the scene of Beren discovering Luthien. That's very romantic. Every moment with Beren and Luthien is romantic. But this takes the cake. This takes the prize. And the thing about Elu Thingol is that he's actually the Triton, to give a nod to Disney's Little Mermaid, of the Silmarillion. He's the overprotective daddy. So he's got his own big love at first sight moment. In this tale, he is the Baron, and Melian plays the role of a Luthien, archetypally here. Although that said, archetypally in the divine feminine, Melian is the first encounter with the goddess, so to speak, as Joseph Campbell would put it, that Thingol has. And he brings home to the other elves the divine feminine, which quite literally in the shape of Melian. But that said, Melian assumes the role of archetypal figure of the mother or the crone later. For a good chunk of the story, she is the crone or the mother and the lover, with Thingol playing the father. But Luthien plays the role of the daughter. Later in the story, Melian will play the role of the crone, and you have Luthien who plays the role of lover and daughter. And in turn, in Turin's story, this is where it gets really gross, you've got Melian who plays both the role of crone alongside Turin's mom, and Turin's younger sister plays the role of daughter and lover. I love the description of how you have the light of Aman was upon her face. While I've heard some Tolkien tubers say that, Melian was just a consolation prize Thingol got for not going to Aman to see the two trees in Valinor. But I can't help but think they kind of got the consolation prize. He got true love. Finwë was someone who you can question. Same with Ingwë. But with Thingol, he's got the best love story of the trio. He might have one of the best elvish love stories of all times. What they found in Aman, can it really match what he got?
No.
The sad thing is, his people are lost going, where's King Elwë? Where's King Thingol? Where did he go? They're panicking. They're sending out search parties. Actually, for years on end. Centuries in some cases. Because they're going, where's our beloved king? Where is he? Where did he go? Did a monster get him? Now, Olwë had to say, okay, I gotta give up. Guys, we gotta get to Aman. And, he leads the Teleri away, and they become the Sea Elves, establishing some ports in Middle-earth, some in Aman. Olwë gave up, and I find that a little sad. The little brother said, well, my big brother's dead. Time to be king and lead my people away. That is a little cold. On the other hand, he had to do what was best for his people. As the other Teleri, who became the Sindar, they ended up proclaiming they were not giving up on finding Thingol, and they would not stop searching. Olwë, he searched for a few years, but he did give up in Elvish terms fairly quickly on finding Elwë. But Elwë got the consolation prize of being king of a larger realm and unchallenged, whereas Olwë had to share with Finwë and Ingwë to an extent, and may have ended up getting slaughtered in the first kinslaying when Fëanor stole his beloved boats. But what do you think of this? He spent centuries just staring into the eyes of Melian.
When I was reading this chapter, felt like I was watching a Disney princess meeting a Disney prince. In that very romantic, aww way. And
other thing it reminded me of was that line from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. The quote is Fuhrer King Bradley's line in one of the last episodes, which the English voice actor did a great job. And he says, rank, personal history, birth, race, sex, the name given to you, it's all meaningless. He said it in a very cynical, even defeatist, cruel way to say that none of those things actually matter. He even implied in that scene that even those you choose to surround yourself with, friends, family, lovers, don't matter. All that matters is the present moment. I don't agree with Bradley. The fact that Thingol and Melian are laid bare in that manner to each other and just spend all those centuries just staring each other in the eye, I'm reminded of that line. It's very true in this story because Thingol and Melian are laid bare. As I keep saying, there is nothing they can hide from each other. And in that moment, it's their truest moment. Now, the sad thing is this love story destined to end in tragedy, as all love stories are. Someone eventually has to die. That's how love stories work. But they would not be so grand and beautiful if there was not some sorrow. There must always be sorrow, just as there must always be beauty for a story to be truly magnificent. A lot of dwarves who decide to precipitate the tragedy, then kind of lie about it by the time of The Hobbit. I'm just commenting on The Hobbit, where you have the dwarves who comment that they consider the guilty party between them and Thingol to have been Thingol. It's really blaming the victim completely and entirely. But that said, there are hints in the Silmarillion that there are dwarves who joined in the editing of the Red Book that Bilbo and Sam and Frodo and the rest of their friends and Aragorn all contributed to, so that we actually do get a sense of their place in the history of Arda. It's also in this chapter that the name reveal for Elwë's elves, the Sindar, the Grey Elves. We also see in this chapter the construction, with the aid of many dwarves and elves, of the great fortress of Menegroth. And Menegroth would later serve, in my opinion, as the greatest of all the fortresses in the war against Morgoth. And it is through the love of Melian and Thingol that a new hope would one day be born. Because while some may call Feanor probably the greatest elf who ever lived, I might actually argue, to an extent, it might be Luthien. She is the Luke Skywalker of Tolkien's Legendarium. And I'm going to include even the Lord of the Rings. That said, Melian's love also provides a barrier between the physical armies of Morgoth that try to penetrate the forest of Doriath, but can't because of the girdle protecting it. It also keeps the Feanorians out for a while. What do you think of the fact that you've got the Lady of the Nightingales? What's your impression of her without having read ahead? She's obviously going to play an important role.
Yes, there's a reason why Maiar showed up there. I've heard some people say there's no such thing as a coincidence.
This is a case where there is no coincidence.
But I don't know if she planned it.
I personally prefer she got a flash of the divine in her mind that pushed for her to follow her bliss there, to borrow a statement from Joseph Campbell, only to end up then seeing Thingol and ending up as enamored with him. There's a lot of details. I really love this chapter. I really love these characters. So we'll see where this goes. But I just love the prose and grammar structure because it reads like an old-fashioned 19th century romantic era novel. Because this story is mythological. It's thematic. You have divine masculine meets divine feminine. You have Thingol established as the male lover archetype of the four major male archetypes. You know, you have the magician, you have the warrior, you have the lover, and you have the king. Thingol does assume the role of king. He assumes that role primarily in the stories of Beren and Luthien, but for the most part, he plays the role of lover as an archetype. Also, the details of just the mythological imagery of a woman singing to the nightingales and the stars above. It's just awe-inspiring. This is a very well-written chapter. It may only be a page and a half. There are authors who've written entire novels that have never written anything this powerful in some ways. And some of them who have been writing for 40, 60 years, and he never approached something this powerful. Tolkien did not just have sincerity, but an unparalleled level of skill. He was a master of grammar and philology, so no one understood the power of language in, I think, maybe all of human history better than him.
But if this video has pleased you, do consider singing alongside your own nightingales to that subscribe and like button, just as Melian did to enchant Thingol.